Chris Toth is the CEO of Vantive, leading more than 23,000 employees in reimagining the dialysis experience and advancing organ therapies. He previously served as CEO of Varian, a Siemens Healthineers company, where he spent 2 decades in leadership across oncology, global operations, and strategy. He also serves on the board of Moon Surgical and has advised global business councils, bringing deep expertise in healthcare innovation at the intersection of technology and medicine. Chris, I'm really glad you're on the Swift Hour. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Thrilled to be here.
Talk a little bit about the history and story of Vantive, and then I want to go deeper into the evolution of kidney care. But let's start big picture.
Yeah,
Tell us about Vantive. I mean, it's a huge company.
Yeah, no, thank you. Huge company and a new company at that. So maybe by way of a little bit of background, there's 70 years of legacy behind the company, but Vantive as an independent company had only been formed just about 7 months ago. So as of February 1st, 2025, we were previously a business segment inside of Baxter. And Baxter International has been a tremendous company in medical technology, healthcare support technologies across the globe. And we were the kidney care segment. And by the kidney care segment, we had 2 parts to the business. One that was focusing on dialysis. So when a patient's kidneys fail, they need dialysis to stay alive because the kidneys are functioning to clear out all of the toxins in the body. So you have to recreate with dialysis the ability to clear. And then separate from that, there's a business portion called acute therapies, which was in the ICU. So in the ICU, for example, if a patient needs septic shock treatments because of infections or carbon dioxide buildup in the lungs, or there's an injury to the kidneys, this would be another type of therapy we provide. So one of the benefits of Vantive has been that within our portfolio, home dialysis, we were actually the original inventors of. Baxter was the original inventor of home dialysis. Home dialysis itself is vastly underutilized. And now as we separate into an independent company, we can just put focus, resources, programmatic development behind that. And our singular area that we look at is what can we do for patients? How do we create a better environment for healthcare delivery?
And we're at a very important inflection point in healthcare delivery in this country. So much is changing, and also, frankly, changing globally. The advancements of technology, but also a significant debate around the quality of healthcare and assurances. Talk specifically about the big picture that you have for the evolution of kidney care in the healthcare industry.
So it's a big question. It's a spectacular question, but just kind of in the sort of big picture view, I'd actually harken back a bit to what I was describing with the company, and that there's a very rich legacy in history, and there was a basis with an invention of home dialysis. So if we double click there, it became a catalyst for us to put our mission as extending lives, expanding possibilities. So we have a basic view of we need to do our jobs as if it was our mother, father, brother, sister, or child getting care, because it's someone's. And so in the context of the big picture, let's go out 5-10 years. What's happened? There's been an enablement that has created awareness, innovation, and evidence to show that home dialysis can play a vital role for patients to keep a higher quality of life and bring down costs for governments. In fact, today, only 10% of patients that get dialysis in their home. This number should be 3, 4, 5x that amount, and it can not only benefit healthcare systems, but most importantly, the human being.
So you've started this business on a few different arenas, but around chronic kidney disease, something often referred to as silent or misunderstood, but CKD is affecting millions worldwide. Why have there been such gaps in care, and how are you fixing that?
So I would divide the discussion around kidney disease into 2 subsegments. One is chronic kidney disease, which is what precedes when your kidneys ultimately fail and you reach end-stage kidney disease. And the reason I sort of say let's talk about what precedes it is this first topic has just simply been underdiagnosed broadly And there's an awareness gap for individuals to understand that they may have some challenges or lack of performance with their kidneys. Overall, globally, we should be pushing to create more awareness. In fact, by 2040, it's estimated that chronic kidney disease will be the 5th biggest killer in the world. And it's a silent killer because of the reasons denoted. It's not diagnosed enough. So that is one significant opportunity. But the second, which is where I'll double click more into, is the end stage kidney disease. And that's the point where we come in. So if you look at what we are uniquely poised to do. So I have a saying in the organization of we can do anything, but we can't do everything. And so we have to understand where we specifically create value for society or impact in a different way. In looking at end stage kidney disease, essentially what has been missing is a programmatic setup to show governments how you can save costs on kidney care delivery, increase quality of life for patients with home dialysis. Simple things like if we just put ourselves in transport into the life of a patient that has end-stage kidney disease, if they are receiving home dialysis, they can actually do this at night while they sleep. And there's a catheter that goes into the stomach lining, and there's a solution that goes in, there's a dwell, and it removes the toxins out of their body, and they wake up. Into the future.
Talk a little bit about technology. We've AI was one of those things covered, almost not covered at all. Nobody was asking to talk about it a few years ago, and now it's probably one of the most relevant and sought after topics within the Concordia agenda more broadly. I think a lot of people, embrace, but also have a nervousness around some of the expansion of some of these technologies. But in healthcare, it actually makes a huge difference.
Yeah, most definitely. So I think as you think about the application of digital artificial intelligence, in some of my comments may have even elevated home too much because I've said a lot of the great things. But let's now go back to that example of that patient who's having care in their home. While there's these great benefits that exist with that, they also are at home administering their own care. That can be very lonely. That can also create a divide between the physician or the nurse that's working with them. And this is where our investment has been going. So we actually pledged forward over the next 5 years, we're investing $1 billion to revolutionize the home dialysis experience, expand vital organ therapies, and expand supply capacity around the globe. And it's very much in this area because now what we can do, the machine that's administering the dialysis while the patient sleeps, we can get the information from it, interpret it, and then we can help to triage what those interactions should be. So now if a patient isn't getting the right dialysis, utilizing algorithms, application of artificial intelligence, we can communicate back with the nurse. We can communicate with the nephrologist being the clinical specialist who's caring for that patient to say, hey, we think this intervention is needed. And then just one other cool aspect, because it's, I talked a lot about technology with that, but around AI, I was so struck by this. Our customer service leader came forward. We sort of opened up to the organization and said, bring us some ideas. How do you want to implement AI so we can serve patients better? We want to serve patients better. And Jason came forward, and what he put up to us was if we use AI technology to listen in to the calls that come in from patients who need support, we can triage better. And you know what we found? We found that we can even see emotion in the interactions and a correlation to better performance. We also saw many calls that would result in us saying, let's replace the device that's giving you your care didn't need a replacement, and we could solve the issue so the patient didn't miss that treatment. So these are the types of unlocks. They're practical, they're simple, they're basic. And I think that's why it feels different, at least for me, this go around with AI. It's not some big bang. It's a series of smaller issues you can just attack and go after.
Talk a little bit about your career. How did you come to this place with Vantive?
Yeah. So first, I feel very blessed to have had the opportunity to end up in medical technology and understanding healthcare delivery. I, prior to joining Vantive, worked for a company in varying medical systems. I began there as an intern, and over a 23-year period, went from intern to CEO. And I got to see a business that was in oncology, and specifically radiation oncology, go from being relatively small to a multi-billion-dollar global business with one central focus: the human being. Who is receiving the care, and how do you help them in a time of fear and need, and the ecosystem around them with the provider? And so I learned from that process just the incredible unlock you can give to human life in that process. And so I was very much attracted to the opportunity to take the kidney care division inside of Baxter, carve out and create a separate company, because you had a company that had the invention of home dialysis. I mean, it's 2025. We have to be more progressive about how care can be delivered. And you look at the digital ecosystems, the AI, and what I saw was a technological base that could be leveraged to broaden the home care, and at the same time, clinical data that supported it. And so I jumped at the chance to come over. It was a great experience to name the company, establish the mission, establish the culture. I simplistically think of it as you establish a strategy, then you build your structure or your team, because your structure follows your strategy. And then you build the culture, because the culture is the operating system that brings it to life. And so even though we're only, a few months here on our own, the journey started about 2 years ago. So we're really well on our way as we were planning for that separation.
I want to ask you again on the a little bit more, to dig a little bit more on the technology side of things. But what were some of the lessons you learned as an intern that stay with you today as the CEO? It's pretty rare to see that sort of trajectory and story within the same institution.
Yeah. So it helps you to keep your BS meter really high. Something could sound good, but you constantly ask yourself the question, what does this look like when it actually gets implemented? You learn really quickly that pretty PowerPoint slides are nothing without the people. And so you always have to be cognizant of who the people are in your organization that are getting the work done, and are you resourcing in the right way? Even in line with strategy, I had watched, kind of coming in ground floor as an intern through different levels in an organization where actually the right strategy was chosen, but there wasn't the commensurate investment around people to then guide the execution, because you just can't do it without the people involved in the process. Probably one of the last things I'd say, and there are many, many more, but probably one of the last things I'd say is that usually the answer to a problem lies as close to the origination of the problem. So what you should not do is ever try to be the smartest room or have people that try to be the smartest in the room. You want to create the smartest room. So create the smartest room, not have people that are trying to be the smartest in the room, because you typically get much better answers.
Back to on the technology piece of things, what's the biggest impediment right now to realizing the full extent of the power that technology can bring to the table in health services?
Oh, well, in health services, I mean, that's a much broader question than very much specifically in dialysis or chronic kidney disease. I'm going to answer it both ways.
Please.
I think broadly in health services, there has been almost, in my view, an aversion to drastically shift clinical practice. There's been this typical mindset of, let's run extended clinical trials and studies and then try to argue why some of the indications or information that came forward may not be enough to shift clinical practice. To be fair and to have equipoise on this, it's very responsible to do that, because if a guideline was established, to change it, you need to have a certain amount of evidence. But I think in the world we're living in now, in 2025, little things like utilizing AI to look through all published papers around how home dialysis outcomes vary from in-center. It can illuminate a combination of both clinical evidence and individual personal interaction. So I had a discussion with our head of health economic, market access, and reimbursement, and she had brought forward to me that we should look at patient support groups and utilize AI to not only take, here's the clinical data, but mine some of the views and the feedback from patients, because healthcare decisions, you have clinical outcomes, but you also have, what is the patient? What does the human being want? So I think that the biggest impediment has maybe been this sort of unwillingness to adopt new at a more rapid pace, which is also healthy. But now as we sit in 2025 and look forward, we should be more open to new inputs, and then we should invest behind that to prove why those are the right decisions to provide care.
We've talked a lot at this summit, and it keeps coming up as a theme in so many of the different conversations I've had about trust.
Yeah.
And as a leader of a company of, and forgive me, 23,000 employees, how do you navigate that in today's space as a leader?
Authenticity is such a critical aspect of leadership to navigate that. You have to be real, and you have to call it real in different conversations. You also very much need to eat big slices of humble pie when you got something wrong, and you need to listen to the organization, take the feedback in. If you make a call and it's not the right path, make the according shift. But around trust, I actually am going to personalize it a little bit. So look, when you have a job in medical technology, in healthcare delivery, it's not about a financial statement. It's not about a number. It's about a human life. And philosophically, doing our jobs as if it's our mother, father, brother, sister, child is exactly the way that you sponsor alignment through an organization of that size. You have to have a mission, you have to have your culture, you have to have your strategy, your direction. But that hey, I'm at a crossroads and this one's tough. What do you do if it's your mother, father, brother, sister, child? And where that happened for me, okay, where that came for me is my wife and I, we have 3 kids, and they're 18, 14, and 12. My 14-year-old, just before his 5th birthday, had a seizure. And we found 8 lesions in his brain. I never had felt so helpless in my life. And yet I was working in medical technology, and he had a condition, or he has a condition called cavernous angioma, which basically is a vascular malformation in his brain. And there's just a few areas where the veins didn't fully come together. And there's a 50% chance per year that there'll be a bleed from those points. If it doesn't bleed, then it's just next year we'll see 50-50 if it does. If it does bleed, it's a very high probability that it keeps bleeding until there's a hematoma, an issue that may cause a seizure. So Bennett ended up having to have brain surgery as a 4, almost 5-year-old. And in that process, I, as I noted before, felt helpless. And I thought, why? Why is that the case? We have so much knowledge, there's so much capability to educate. And this is as digital is starting to ramp up more. And, why should where you live determine if you live? Why should you have heterogeneity in care delivery? And this is where the digital ecosystems can drive differentiation. But there was a secondary aspect of it, which was the device that calibrated the surgical instrument to the imaging that took place. It lost calibration during his surgery. And I talked to the neurosurgeon after, and he shared with me he'd had those problems consistently. And the feedback he had heard from the company was it was user error. And what I remembered in that moment is, if he's consistently having an issue and he's telling the company that, and they're saying it's user error, I actually think there's an opportunity as a company to do better. And so this is where this mother, father, brother, sister, child test for me came from, was because of my son and watching that process with him. So I just leave it as, we really have a responsibility. I think this does engender back to, like, how do you lead an organization that size? How do you create an authenticity, a reality? It's because you put the patient at the center. you align it as if it's their family member, and you drive accordingly.
How's Bennett today?
He's doing awesome.
How old is
he's 14. Last night he's almost 15, and he started his first driver's ed course. So I think we got a different problem upcoming. But he plays ice hockey, and you would never know other than if he shaves his head, he's got a big scar on the left side. And it's really important, though. While I get to tell the story, which is really happy there's a lot of people that don't get to. And that's why we have to do well for others.
Well, that's I think we will leave it there, because that's a very powerful message to leave it on. And I think I think there's a lot to this intersection of technology, innovation, proper health delivery, embracing opportunity, but also fixing this trust gap so that we can see all of it completely through to fruition. I think is really important. So Chris Toth, thank you very, very much for joining the Swift Hour.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
Thank you.